Russian troops are closing in on the city center of Kyiv. Of course, that is the capital of Ukraine. Explosions have been heard across the country. The president said more than 130 Ukrainians were killed in the first day of fighting. Charlie D'Agata kicks off our team coverage of the conflict from Kyiv. Charlie, good morning.
Good morning to you, Vlad. Residents here woke up to air raid sirens, including us this morning, if they got any sleep at all. We heard huge explosions. They started around 4 o'clock in the morning. The Ukrainian Defense Ministry said Russian reconnaissance teams have reached parts of the city in the north, just a few miles from the city center itself. Explosions lit up the city skyline overnight. It's unclear whether this is a Russian or Ukrainian aircraft falling from the sky in flames, but missiles and rockets rained down on the capital in the early hours. A shattered apartment block in the city, proof of the indiscriminate strikes that pounded residential neighborhoods.
My mother screaming, wake up, wake up. I'm waking, all in the dust, screaming.
At first light, the Ukrainian president told his people what they already knew. At 4 a.m., Russian forces launched missile strikes, he said. They say civilian objects are not a target for them. This is a lie. On the northern outskirts of the city, a ferocious battle broke out at the Gostomel air base. Ukrainian forces trying to fend off invading Russian paratroopers. Day 2 of the invasion, and Russian troops are knocking on the door of the capital itself. They advanced south from Belarus, seizing Chernobyl and the highly radioactive grounds of the former nuclear power plant north of Kyiv. In desperation, the government put out the call for men 18 to 60 to arm themselves for battle, banning them from fleeing the country. Plenty have stepped forward. This morning, they were handing out guns at a local sports facility. They don't want us revealing this location because they don't want it to be a target for the Russian military. But we have seen a steady stream of volunteers. The commander told us it's not hundreds, but thousands, very few with any military experience, every single one of them ready to fight. Georgi, a map maker by trade, says he'll learn on the go. Why was it important for you to volunteer today? This is my country, he said. I have a family. I have a duty to protect my family and my country. And this is what it has come down to today, the reality that the Russians are on the way and closing in fast. And that raises the terrifying prospect of street-to-street guerrilla warfare, outmatched, outgunned, and out of options. Anne-Marie and Vlad?
Yeah, Charlie, you said it right there. I thought to myself, it is certainly admirable to see civilians willing to take up arms to protect their country. It flies in the face of, Putin's assertion that somehow Ukrainians feel like they're Russian or are Russian. They're not. They're Ukrainian and they're proud. But it's also an indication of just how outgunned they are. Is there a concern that Russian forces will take over the capital, Kyiv? I mean, sooner than later. What are you seeing in the city?
Well, certainly they are advancing much quicker, and they have advanced much quicker in the past 24 hours. And this is real. There have been people in neighborhoods in the north who have been encouraged by the government, and when I say the north, I mean north here in the capital, to make Molotov cocktails. There are reports that something like 18,000 guns have been handed out. And we went to that place. They didn't want us, as I said in that short piece there, that they didn't want us to show the location for obvious reasons. But it was kind of like a sports facility. And there was just a line of people that were going in. These men, I was going to say young men. They weren't all young. People ranging in age from, as I said, 18 to, I'd say 60 and above. And they were going there and they were loaded up. I mean, they had their blankets, they had sleeping mats. They were getting ready to bed in, and a lot of them were getting weapons. We were told that they were concerned that they didn't have enough weapons to go around. And the commander said, I said, what do you do in that situation? They said, well, we're just going to have to take the weapons off soldiers. Can you hold on for a moment? Can you hear that in the distance?
Yeah.
I do.
And then it stopped. So what's been happening in the past 2.5, 3 minutes or so are those thuds. And what's unique about that versus what we've been hearing in the past, 24, 36 hours, which sounded like possibly cruise missiles or airstrikes, this is repeated And it's further away. Those aren't anywhere near as loud as some of the explosions that we've been hearing throughout the day, which would suggest, and I'm no expert, trust me, that might be artillery fire on the outskirts of the city. But this is why everybody's on edge. You know, they woke up to those the air raid sirens. That apartment building got hit. People are arming up now. They're ready to defend their neighborhoods. They have a tremendous amount of support for Ukrainian forces who have been fighting Russian forces, but they know eventually they're going to be outnumbered, and they're obviously outgunned. We know for a fact that paratroopers have advanced to areas around the city trying to take airfields. So what everybody's expecting now is this sort of final onslaught, but they are willing to defend their territory with everything they've got, which isn't much.
You know, Charlie, I'm struck by the images that have been coming out of Ukraine, shot by you and other reporters there on the ground, showing young children frightened by the sound of the aerial bombardment. And then there's President Zelensky, who has essentially said that he is a direct target of President Putin and the Russians, and not just the president, but his family as well. That has to be absolutely terrifying to know that a head of state is being targeted by another head of state. What are you learning, if anything, about what measures, what precautions are being taken by President Zelensky should the Russians capture Kyiv? Is there a way for him to essentially, and I don't want to make it sound like a Bond movie, but to escape from the clutches of the Russians?
Well, I'm sure plans are in place, Vlad. But when you look at President Zelensky, he's really been trying to rally the forces, and it's been difficult for him. This is a former professional comedian. He's been thrown into this situation. He has to be defiant. As of yesterday, when the bombs started falling after 5 a.m. after President Putin's speech, he said that he was going to be on air, that he was still in the capital, and he was going to be on air every hour in order to reassure the people of Ukraine, especially the people in Kyiv. After that, we didn't hear from him for 7 hours. So I'm not entirely sure they're in control of the situation on the ground, but he knows he's a target. The thing about being a foe to President Putin, it doesn't end well for anybody. So being defiant, being the president of Ukraine, where you've got the Russians who are invading, President Putin himself on the march, he understands entirely the terrifying dynamics that he himself will be targeted, arrested or worse. So you may as well just go ahead and defiantly face those threats and those fears and stand up for the people of Ukraine. And it's really not, when I say this, I'm not cheerleading. The people that you speak to here are incredibly defiant. They're determined. They will fight. This is not, we went there this morning, it didn't feel like a pep rally. A lot of the men we spoke to, they were upset. I mean, they were visibly upset, which means that they were taking seriously the challenges ahead, and they're ready to fight. And President Zelensky has tapped into that. Once again, he really doesn't have much more than to stand for this. But in terms of the leadership, he also understands that they have to hold out for as long as they can. And I cannot imagine being Russia's neighbor. The threat has been here since 2014 and long before that they haven't made some sort of contingency plans if the Russians close in, and if they close in quickly.
I think what's so stunning, Vlad and Charlie, for me is, as I'm talking to you, Charlie, as we're talking to you, I think just like a week ago, how different everything was, how different the city of Kyiv looked. It was busy behind you. We weren't talking about people walking to Poland to try to escape. The radical change, and even watching President Zelensky with the various press conferences, how he went from the suit to sort of the
He's wearing
fleece,
a flak jacket.
And then, it was a T-shirt, and you could just tell that he had been he's sort of burning the candle at both ends. And one of the quotes that he said that really struck me, Charlie, is he says to the Ukrainian people, "We are protecting our country alone, like yesterday. The most powerful country in the world watched from afar."
And yet,
I was like, oh.
I know. It's so difficult and disturbing to hear those words, Anne-Marie and Charlie. But one thing that we should point out is that the United States, for the last month, has been sort of sharing this intelligence, which was classified intelligence, with Russian troop movements. And you reported, Charlie, from the streets in Kyiv and other parts of Ukraine, that people were not really believing that Vladimir Putin would go this far, that when the troop movement started to happen 24 hours ago, a little over 24 hours ago, people were surprised in Ukraine.
Yeah, I mean, Vlad, first of all, it's human nature. You know, when you're about to face something this catastrophic, you really kind of hope for the best. And it wasn't a question of denial. You know, we were speaking to people here in Kyiv. They weren't utterly convinced that Russia was not going to attack the capital. It just didn't make sense to them. They thought this struggle and the conflict would continue and worsen in the east. Not that they believed President Putin's words when he said he was not going to invade. Clearly he did. Now he says he doesn't want to occupy the area. They're not going to believe anything that President Putin says. And this battle has largely been contained to the east, and it really hasn't affected the capital. And when you're here, you know, and you're a young man or a young woman, you've got a family, you have to make these decisions, which are really tough. Do I leave what I know is the safety of my own home in a city of 3 million people? Is it really going to affect me? Or am I going to be running the risk of getting hit from artillery or an airstrike? Now with the Russians marching in, it's changed the calculus entirely. Tens of thousands of people have tried to flee the city. There will be many more. People are hiding out in bomb shelters. But this isn't a place, with all due respect, you know, like Iraq or Afghanistan, that has seen conflict raging for decades. You know, this is a relatively civilized, relatively European, I have to choose those words carefully too, city where you wouldn't expect that or hope that it's going to happen. So it's partly human nature, but they are not in denial. You know, they've been watching the reports. They've been seeing the information coming out of Washington, all the intelligence that's been shared. President Zelensky has been sharing that information too. He knows that he has to because there are other sources of getting that information, but he's tried to maintain, tried not to sow panic, because it was terrifying when you hear that the Russians are about to invade, between 150 and 190,000 Russians with all of the weaponry are perched and ready to make a move. You're still hoping for the best, but realizing that things could go very badly wrong. And that's what we've seen over the past 24, 36 hours, where people are starting to appreciate reality. Now, as you said, you know, the roads behind me are essentially empty. A lot of the shops are closed. There's a big rush to get fuel. It's always the case in a situation like this when you're facing a crisis. Same as in the United States when you're facing a natural disaster. It's similar to that in terms of what you do in preparation. But people are moving to safer ground. A lot of people are now headed west to Lviv. That's about 7 or 8 hours out of here, west to the border with Poland, because they're keeping their options open. And when you're in a scenario like this, you start running out of options. When you've got the attacks that are happening, you wake up in the morning and you hear these explosions. The kids are getting worried. You hear the air raid sirens. It's getting closer. You're essentially waiting for the Russians to invade. At some point, you're thinking, well, am I going to hunker down and wait this out and just hope for the best? Or am I going to get out of here and get someplace safer?
Such a vivid picture. Charlie, thanks for letting us know how just regular Ukrainians are handling this crisis situation. Appreciate it.